Hello, I hope this video finds you well. This is for my Year 10 design class, and in this video we are going to set up your repository that you'll use throughout this entire course, and this is how you'll share your work with me and also where you'll learn the basics of GitHub. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do is you have to create a GitHub account. If you haven't done that yet, you can pause the video and do that now. When you create a username in GitHub, you're going to have to go through a process of verifying through your email. So once you set it up, go into your email and check for that verification email. So once you've done that, we're going to set up a repository. So what a repository is a location on the GitHub servers that store code. What's really important is that this is not like Google Drive that syncs in real time. This will store code and it will only update when you tell it to. So what we're going to do is build a repository and then clone that on our computer. Where this becomes really useful is when you're working in teams. In our course, we're only going to be working individually so that we understand how GitHub works. But eventually you learn to work in teams where you can actually see multiple changes, and GitHub will keep track of the history of development. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new repository, and we're going to call that year_10_design. And this is where I'm going to store all my Year 10 design coding option work. So basically this is where you're going to keep all your work for the course. We want to keep it public. You can make it private if you'd like, but not for our course because then you'd have to share it with me. And we're going to initialize it with the README. And we're going to hit Create Repository. Make sure you initialize it with the README. A lot of times people don't, and it's not a huge issue, but with this video, you have to have it kind of set up with the README. Okay, so now we have this repository, and what I want to do is I'm going to clone that on my computer. And what that means is I'm going to make a duplicate of whatever's in this repository on my computer. So what happens is then I work on my computer. When I'm done working, I will, what they say is push that to GitHub. So every time I'm done working, I'll stop and I'll tell my computer to basically take any of the work I've done on my computer and mirror it on GitHub. To do that, I have to get a link to this. So I'm going to select this link. This is my GitHub link to this specific repository. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that. And now I'm just going to go back over to my computer. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a new folder on my computer, and that folder is going to be called GitHub repo. So here's that folder. I'm going to right click. Well, before I do that, I'm going to give it a new name. So let's right click, rename, and we're going to call that GitHub repo. So this is a nice way of organizing myself where I'm going to put all of my repositories inside this folder. So what's going to happen is once I've cloned that repository I made on GitHub, we're going to see it in here. So we're just going to set that up. Okay, so the next step is we want to check to make sure that we have what's called Git Commands on our computer. So I'm going to X this out and I'm going to open a terminal at this folder location. And so what that means is I'm going to type in commands, but the commands are going to run knowing it's at this location on your computer in this folder. To do that, we right click and we come down, we say new terminal app folder. And there it is. Now, you might not have this option. And let me take a second and show you what I mean. If you don't set this option on your computer, it actually can be a problem and you just have to turn it on. So to do that, what you do is you go into your system preferences, go into keyboard, and you scroll right down somewhere and select keyboard. That's what I want, shortcuts. Keyboard, shortcuts, and in here, one second. I found it once I scrolled in. There it is, new terminal app folder, new terminal tab app folder. So I have both of these on. Notice if I turn both those on and I right click, you see how they're not here anymore? But I want to turn them on because I want to work in the terminal. And there they are. So that's all I have to do. So now that we're in here, you're going to type the word Git. And if GitHub has been installed or Git Commands is installed on your computer, you should, after a little bit of a delay, see all the help. So this is just all the information about how to use it. If it's not installed, it will automatically install it. So if at this point you say install, if it asks you to install anything, just click yes. And then once that's done, you should be able to hit Git and it should come up. Okay, So now if I hit ls, that's going to list everything in that folder, and there's nothing in there. And I'm going to show you this by showing the folder here on the right-hand side and the command on the left-hand side. So what we're going to do is we want to tell the computer to clone this repository on my computer. So it's going to make a folder on my computer that is associated with this repository. Again, it doesn't mean that it updates them in real time. It just means that there's a relationship. And when I'm ready, I can say take everything on my computer and then update that onto GitHub servers. So remember how we copied this link here. I'll just do it again in case it didn't take. I'm going to come to my terminal and I'm going to type in, let's just get this up here. I'm going to go git space clone and I'm going to paste that big long link. And watch right here. I'm going to hit enter and there's that terminal. So now what I have is I have a clone of that repository on my computer. And that's it. So now I can put this away and I don't need to deal with that anymore. So now we can close this terminal up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to work only in this folder for my course. So basically I'm going to make subfolders in here, but any code that you do during this course you're going to do in here, and then what we can do is it makes it really easy for me to see the updates that you do, as well as give some feedback, and we can share code this way. But what we're going to do is we're going to open up Sublime Text and we're going to actually do our first update. So let's do this. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to open Sublime Text. And there's Sublime Text. Now this might be a good point to highlight. A lot of students will say to me, well, why don't we use GitHub Desktop? The reason I don't use GitHub Desktop here is because I want you to learn how to use the command prompts, or the terminal version. So I'm going to drag this in here, and there's my year 10 design, there's my README file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make two folders in here. I'm going to make one new file, or sorry, not files, pardon me. I'm going to make a new folder, and that folder is going to be called Demo Programs. So this is where I'm going to write any demo programs that we might do in class, any exercises, and it's a way of keeping track of that. And I'm going to make another new folder, and it's going to be called Project 1 Work. And so if we come into here, you see these two folders here that are now inside the clone of my repository on my computer. So we're going to create a new file just to make sure this works. So I'm going to right click on Demo Programs. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to say File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as sorting list.py. So this is a Python example, and you can see when I expand this, and you see how these dots have appeared? What this means is that this folder has some new file that's not reflected, that's not in the repository. So if we go into our repository here, again, those folders don't exist, just that README. And that's because I haven't actually pushed it to the internet. So let's make a really simple file here. So let's just make a list, and I'm going to put the numbers, I don't know, 3, 5, 6, and 1 in there. And I'm going to then sort it. And so to sort this list, I can say simply list.sort, and then I'm going to print my list. So I'll save this file now, and notice this file is located in Demo Programs, and I come to this view, the Finder view, there's Demo Programs, and I expand this, and there's that file. So let's run it. The way I run this is I can right click on that Demo Programs, and I'm going to open a new terminal folder in that directory. And this is where students usually make most of their mistakes right now, is they just open a general terminal folder, but it won't be in the right spot. When I hit ls, which lists all the files, I see there's that file sorting list. And I'm going to say Python 3, I'm going to put an S, hit tab to auto-complete it, and there's that list sorted. So I know it works. Perfect. So now I'm going to get rid of this terminal, and everything's saved. And again, these dots indicate that I have what are called untracked changes. That means the repository on my computer is different than the repository that is online. So what we're going to do now is we're going to push this content to our online repository. So how do we do that? So the way we do this is we select the repository we want to basically match up. we want to push the content. So I'm going to right click on Year 10 Design, and I'm going to open a new terminal app folder. And there are 3 commands that you want to become familiar with. They're all Git commands. The first one is git space add space dot. And what that does is it will look at the differences on your computer, what's different on your computer compared to what is online, and then say, make note of all of those things. The second one is git commit -m for a message, and I'm going to say added, what was it called? Sorting list .py. Okay. So the first thing would be added, and then we commit it. We say, okay, now the things that you've noticed are different. Oh, I'm committing that I want you to make these changes, and I'm going to add this little message. And I hit enter, and then it tells me that it's done it. And then the last thing I do is I do git space push. And what that then does is it takes anything that's different on the computer and pushes it to your repository. So now, watch what happens when I come in here and refresh. There's my folder demo programs. There's my sorting list.py. And notice, this is the message that comes along with it. It says you've added, this tells me what the message is. I can click in here and see the file, which is great. And there's that. Now, the one thing you might say to yourself is, well, wait a second, you have this folder called Project One Work and it's not there. And that's true. And the reason why is that, the system is smart enough to know that that is an empty folder and it doesn't actually add or push that until you've actually added some content. So if you've managed to successfully follow along, you're good to go. You now have a repository that's set up, and the beautiful thing about this is every time that you work on your computer, if you do this add commit push, that will update the online version of your repository and then show the progression of your work. And this is where habits come into play. It's really important that every time in this course that you've worked for a while, when you're done working, you add commit push. Again, we are not going to be adding any to this repository in any other way. We are only worried about pushing stuff from your computer to your repository. But getting comfortable with this workflow is really important. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a wonderful day.